So a quick update on what's happening in the Arctic, and the question is, will this impact our winter? I think it will. And we're already seeing these big changes. We've got more sea ice up here. Okay, this is last Sunday, the orange here. That's your ice sheet that's across the Arctic Ocean. Notice the open water north of Alaska. Also still some open water here north of Siberia. So any cold air that's forming here has to move across this open water. It's energy, so to speak, from the atmosphere into the ocean as it converts that into water into ice. This is where we were last week, and this is where we are right now. Solid ice sheet now across Siberia, not quite to Alaska, still open water north of the Alaska here. So any cold air that tries to move across likely will be modified some. But that is changing quickly because I got to tell you, it is cold across Alaska. I was looking at some of the temperatures here. We've been at or below zero. It is cold here. No wonder we've added more snowpack here. And that's acting almost as a freezer, if you will, to keep things cold. And you're reflecting what little sunlight you got. So much colder conditions across the Arctic as we develop some very chilly air here too. And I think that also means more snow building across parts of Alaska all the way through December. This is looking at your weeklies. Clearly, I think there's a chance for some snow here, but look at where it's really piling up. This isn't a surprise across the West Coast. This is kind of the pattern that we're in here with all that snow piling up, kind of fits the bill for what we've seen lately. I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes there with these big storms that are just wrapping up here in the Gulf of Alaska. We've got a strong thermal difference here. Temperatures of the ocean east of Japan into the northern Pacific above average. With that temperature contrast, you're getting those big storms that are forming right along that temperature gradient. We're also seeing La Nina too. This is happening here in the eastern Pacific. And typically with a La Nina, right, with cooler waters here, you've got your colder air starting to set up here across the northern hemisphere. Also across North America without a strong contrast. So if this water was really above average and you get really cold here, now you've got a chance for your storms to form and you have an active subtropical jet. I think that's different this year. So we're already seeing that. Hey, thanks, by the way, for coming by, guys. If it's your first time, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. A lot of new folks on the channel today. So if it's your first time, thanks. Welcome. I'm Travis Roberts. And a little bit about me. I used to be on TV. I was a chief meteorologist, but I'm not there anymore. I've got out of that business many years ago, and now we're just on YouTube talking about all these storms and what we're seeing. A couple of things that jump out at me. A big storm that's forming here east of the Rockies. Got a big area of low pressure here up along the Hudson, and another one swinging through the Gulf of Alaska. So 3 big storms right now that we're watching. This first one is going to bring some severe weather Tuesday into Wednesday. First across the northern plains and eventually into southern plains, maybe even as far east as the Mississippi River Valley as this storm gets cranking. And look, maybe, my gracious, will we see some snow on the backside of this storm for parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan? I don't know. And we're going to talk about that, and I'll explain more why I don't know that really necessarily will happen. Another storm slamming into the west, more snow here. Maybe some much needed rain for the east. And look, this is going to be super active. I'm telling you guys, just south of Alaska with that thermal gradient, it is so cold here across Alaska right now. You saw those above average temperatures here in the water. So boom, that's your storm track. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with these storms just spinning up over and over again, dragging troughs into the west, keeping us stormy across the west coast, high pressure off the east coast. I think that's going to be the trend. Your big ridge like this and your trough in the west, I think that continues as we head into November. Let's talk about the short term though. This snowstorm across the Rockies is going to be pretty significant, especially into the mountains here of Wyoming, Colorado, Tuesday, wrapping up finally by Wednesday, and another one moving into the Cascades, into parts of Washington, Oregon, northern parts of California, up into the mountains. We'll see some snow, and it could really pick up heading into Thursday as this area of low pressure moves ashore. Decent onshore flow, so big snows here into the mountains, and then that starts to push into the Intermountain West as we move into Saturday and Sunday. Let's go a bit further east. Well, let's talk about these snow totals again. It'll be feet of snow, I think, up in the mountains, and again, more snow here into the mountains of Oregon and Washington, and I'll show you that onshore flow. That's why I think we could see feet of snow here in the mountains. What about this though? Are we actually going to see snow across Minnesota? Well, I think it's going to be a little bit too warm. First, we'll start off with the European. I think it has a good handle on what's going on across the Rockies. And then again, some severe weather possible as we see those temperatures start to drop. It's going to be a high shear, low instability environment. In other words, there's not going to be a lot of instability, but a high shear environment where you have that change of wind direction with height. So that could lead to a few tornadoes, some hail, Storm Prediction Center already highlighting this area. It looks like most of this is honestly really heading into Tuesday night into early Wednesday. And then beyond that, as we head into Wednesday, everything kicks off to the east a little bit. So now we're watching parts of Kansas down to Oklahoma, even Texas, and as far east as Arkansas and Missouri, and Illinois and Wisconsin. As our temperatures change, some strong to severe thunderstorms possible with this as it moves off to the east. And maybe some much needed rain. I mean, you've got the severe weather coming, which isn't good, but again, some rain in many areas who really haven't seen much rain. Low pressure deepening as it heads towards the Great Lakes. Your trough in the upper levels back here, and here's your cold pocket of air aloft, right? So you've got this back here, surface low pressure deepening, warm front kind of like this. Here's your cold front dropping to the south. Behind that, the cold air starting to catch up here to your surface low pressure in a bit of a deformation zone as the low moves into the Great Lakes. On the back side of this, do we dynamically cool enough to switch over to snow? Maybe. Okay, I think it's not a likely scenario. The European's a little warmer. The GFS says, hey man, there's a snowstorm coming from Minneapolis up into Duluth, and it could get heavy. I don't believe the GFS. I think it's too aggressive with the cold. The European probably has a better handle on it. I think it's worth watching. I'm paying attention. I can tell you that. And I saw a discussion in the National Weather Service. I don't remember what office it was out of, but they were definitely looking at it. Although the forecast at this point is just saying mostly a rain event. All right, let's take this out a little bit wider view here. Of course, once this moves through the Great Lakes, that low is going to move into Canada. It's going to bring some rain and snow here. It looks like all rain here for the southern cities of Canada. Eventually, some colder air builds in. Some much needed rain. It doesn't look like a lot, though, for parts of the Midwest, maybe even the Appalachians into the Northeast and the South as our front starts to kind of die out here. High pressure builds in. It's going to bring some cooler air here into the Northeast again, and maybe a few rain showers. That will start to lift out. On the backside of this, return flow bringing moisture back into the Great Plains states, and then our next storm already slamming into the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, with more snow heading into the first part of next week. Then we turn our attention to what's going on in the tropics because National Hurricane Center watching this area. This is the same area we've been watching for the last couple of days. It's just now we're within that 7-day window that they start talking about it. Take a look at the GFS ensembles. This is taking us into Sunday and Monday, trying to show something developing in this general area. The question is, what happens after this? Now, you're going to see this thing split off into multiple areas because this is showing really the ensemble member with all different solutions. Some agreement at first, but then look, everything kind of splits up. The thing that I'm worried about is the fact that this is bringing it north, right? Where is this going to go? What are we going to be looking at? I think it all depends on the upper level pattern as we head into next week. A lot of time before we get there, so that's something that I'm paying attention to. And if you're in Florida or the Gulf Coast or even the East Coast, you got to watch it. Okay, that's all I got, guys. If you've not subscribed, I hope you will, and I hope you'll come back. See you next time.